Keegan. I'm just gonna assume you guys yelled Murray back at me, but Keegan Murray, man, former number 4 overall pick, possibly the cutest king in Sacramento, at least now that I don't live there. You're welcome, Keegan, and sorry, Sacramento. I'll be back for the holidays. Anyway, enough bullshitting. Keegan had a great rookie year. I think what stood out the most to me was his composure and confidence. He never looked flustered or unsure of himself out there. He just came in and started sniping. He was ultra efficient from downtown, about 41% on over 6 threes per game, which led him to break the record for the most threes made by a rookie. Last year, he averaged a little over 12 points per game, but did have a 30-point performance. I mentioned in an earlier video that I think he gets 40 at some point this year, which, as I'm sure you know by now, is not quite the same accomplishment as it was in years past. Last season, there were 203 40-point games by 57 different players. Both of those numbers shattered the previous records of 142 games in the 1961-62 season and 47 players in the 2020-2021 season. And before you start yelling about how nobody plays defense anymore, please understand that we are currently experiencing the most talented era of basketball ever, across the world, and especially in the NBA. Everybody can drop 20, most starters can drop 30, and Keegan Murray can drop 40. You heard it here first. Unless you watched my season preview video, in which case you heard it there first. Let's talk expectations. I know every Kings fan is eager to see Keegan Murray transform into an all-star this year, but I want to warn you, while I do think a significant improvement is coming, you gotta understand what this guy's role is in our offense. He's the third option on this team, which should help his efficiency stay about the same, if not better, but from like a points per game perspective, it does cap his ceiling a bit. If we're talking strictly scoring and points per game, I think his floor is like 12 points per game, which is, basically what he had last year. But I do think his ceiling is like 18 to 20 points per game, which would be awesome. A 6 to 8 point increase, assuming his shooting splits remain relatively the same, would mean he's well on his way to becoming the player we all hoped he'd be after drafting him 4th overall. But if we take a look back at some recent top 4 picks and check out the types of jumps we saw from them going from their rookie year to their sophomore campaign, well, the results are pretty much what you'd expect. And remember, I'm strictly looking at points per game. This is not taking into account efficiency or lack thereof, whether or not they improved other facets of their game, or what their role is on their given team. And the reason I'm talking about points is because, well, that's what most fans look at when deciding how good a player is. Also, it's just the easiest stat to look at when trying to decipher a player's progress from year to year, especially when looking at younger players, because scoring is typically what improves the fastest. So, if we look at the 2021 draft, there's Cade Cunningham, who went from 17.4 points per game to 19.9. Jalen Green, who went from 17.3 to 22.1. Evan Mobley, 15 points per game to 16.2. And Scotty Barnes, who actually stayed the same. He went 15.3 to 15.3. But all of his shooting percentages did take a dip. So if you average all that out, it's like a 2 or 3 point increase. Now, the 2020 draft, we have Anthony Edwards, who went from 19.3 points to 21.3. It wasn't until his third year that he really became the star that we see today. And I should also mention, Keegan Murray is not Anthony Edwards. Very few people are. Second pick in that year's draft was James Wiseman, who went from 11.5 points per game to 6.9. And I would be absolutely shocked if Keegan's career took the same turn Wiseman's did. Next, we got LaMelo Ball, who went from 15.7 to 20.1. Again, LaMelo is 1, a very different player, and 2, another young star. Patrick Williams was the 4th pick that year. He went from 9.2 points to 9, although his shooting splits did go up. And I know I mentioned a couple stars there, but I just want to reiterate, I'm not saying Keegan doesn't have star potential, but his style of play and just how he's built is much different than a lot of other top 3 or 4 picks that you usually see. Finally, let's look at one more recent draft class. We'll just stay in order and take a peek at 2019, even though, again, we're going to be talking about a couple unicorns here. First of which, Zion Williamson, 22.5 points to 27, but he's also fucking Zion, okay? Then we got John Morant, He went from 17.8 to 19.1. Again, it wasn't until his third year that he blossomed into a borderline superstar, averaging 27.4 points per game. But again, two absolute unicorns. And I'm sorry, but Keegan Murray is just not even in that same conversation. Then we got RJ Barrett, who went from 14.3 to 17.6, and again, it wasn't until his third and fourth years that he really took off as a scorer and main option on a playoff team. Now, if we look at the number 4 pick from that draft, DeAndre Hunter, he had a very similar 12.3 points per game to Keegan Murray's 12.2, and he improved to 15 points per game that next season. Albeit, his efficiency numbers were nowhere close to Keegan's, but I think that 15 points per game is a little more realistic as opposed to those second year guys who averaged almost 20. Keegan is just in a different situation, so we have to alter our expectations. He's also an older rookie, which typically means that they are closer to their peak than the other prospects that come out of the same draft. Now, the one caveat is that Keegan was basically a spot-up shooter last year, and we've already seen through Summer League and preseason that the teams are going to put a lot of effort into expanding his role. In this expanded role, I would love to see his rebounding and assist numbers go up, which, if you're assuming he'll attack the rim more this year, then you should expect to see his assists per game improve, as he'll have more opportunities for drive and kicks. Also, rebounding is going to be a point of emphasis for Mike Brown's guys, so expect to see him crashing the boards more often. The lack of turnovers he had as a rookie who was playing almost 30 minutes per game is really impressive. I bet he commits those at a higher rate this year for every reason I just mentioned. If you have the ball in your hands more often, you're just going to see more turnovers, and that's fine. Similarly, I bet his three-point percentage goes down a bit, but I'm still expecting him to be one of the better outside shooters in the league. With all that said, I really do think Keegan is going to be really good this year. I just wanted to manage some expectations in case you were banking on him winning the Most Improved Player of the Year award or something like that. Which, by the way, I have some strong opinions about. I don't think guys who are drafted in the lottery, especially, top 5 guys, should be allowed to win that award in their first, 3 or 4 years. Now, if a guy has a crazy comeback later in his career or for whatever reason he finally finds his groove, that's different. That's fine. But Ja Morant winning that shit 2 years ago makes no sense. He progressed to where everyone expected him to as a top 2 pick. Anyway, I love Keegan Murray. Sorry for talking about so many other guys. Just needed to add some context. Keegan will take a good sized leap this year. We'll just have to wait and see how big a leap we're really talking.